Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're plunging into a book that was just so revolutionary. It didn't just capture a moment, it really ignited an entire movement. And yet, for decades, it was also profoundly misunderstood, especially in its most widely read form.
Absolutely.
We're talking, of course, about Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, often called like the founding text of the modern women's movement.
It truly is a monumental work. And what's just fascinating is how its journey into English, well, it's almost as complex and revealing as the philosophy inside it. It's like a story within a story.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to go beyond just a summary.
Right.
We'll definitely explore Beauvoir's groundbreaking arguments about women being cast as the other. That's key.
Crucial.
But we're also going to unpack this surprising, almost scandalous story behind its first English translation.
Yeah, that translation saga.
And how that really shaped how people received it. You'll see how the act of translation itself kind of mirrored the very themes Beauvoir was writing about, often in really ironic ways.
Prepare for some genuine aha moments, I think. We'll show how these critical philosophical concepts were initially just obscured, stripped away almost.
Losing that existentialist core.
Exactly. And we'll dig into how Beauvoir just meticulously dissects everything, the biological, the social, psychological factors that define what woman is, or maybe more accurately, how woman is made.
Right. Constructed by society and culture.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's unpack this. First up, the other translation, an unwitting betrayal.
It's really hard to overstate the power of Beauvoir's original message. I mean, think about readers like Betty Friedan or Susan Griffin. They were electrified.
Electrified, yeah.
Griffin famously said she was never the same after reading it, after encountering that core idea. Women defined as the other. And Katrina Crowe wasn't really exaggerating when she called it probably the most important and influential philosophical treatise of the 20th century.
I can feel the weight of that. But here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a little unsettling for those early English readers. Enter H.M. Parsley, the guy who did the first English translation in 1953. Now, get this. Parsley wasn't a philosopher.
Nope.
Not even a French lit expert. He was a retired professor of zoology.
Zoology, yes.
What does that background immediately signal to you about tackling a text like The Second Sex?
Well, you immediately sense a potential disconnect, right? A zoologist brings a different lens than a philosopher.
Completely different framework.
And it wasn't just his background. The publisher, Alfred Knopf, actually told Parsley to condense the text.
Condense it?
Yeah, even suggested Beauvoir certainly suffers from verbal diarrhea.
Oh, wow. That's blunt.
Right. So this instruction, plus Parsley's scientific background, well, it had huge consequences. He ended up removing as much as 15% of the original French.
15%. That's not just editing. That's significant.
It's massive. But maybe even more crucially, he also, perhaps without meaning to, mistranslated the whole work.
How so?
He treated Beauvoir's really specific technical terms, words, tied directly to existentialism, as just ordinary, everyday words, which effectively stripped out
or the philosophical armature. For someone not deep in philosophy, what's the key thing they missed because of that translation? What was Beauvoir really getting at?
That's such a vital point. For Beauvoir, that existentialist core is all about, well, it's the idea that we as humans are fundamentally free. We create who we are through choices, through action.
Not just born a certain way.
Exactly. It's about becoming, not just being. So when Parsley translated those key terms like common words, he just diluted that radical emphasis on freedom, on the constructed nature of identity.
Making it sound more like just...
Kind of, yeah. More like observations than these profound philosophical claims. I mean, he apparently conveyed some nuances of poetry and irony, but overall, it was more a paraphrase, not an accurate philosophical translation.
So not just cutting chunks, but fundamentally changing the philosophical flavor by missing the specialized language. Okay.
Right.
And what's even more fascinating here is Parsley's own ideology.
Yeah.
His connection to reform eugenics.
Yeah, this adds another layer. His belief that, scientifically enlightened people should guide policy based on rational and unemotional analysis.
Which creates this incredibly ironic twist, doesn't it?
Totally ironic. Because Parsley, with his background and beliefs, he actually ended up undermining not Beauvoir's feminism, but his own ideology.
How do you mean?
Well, despite all the flaws in his translation, It gave the book this huge audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
It allowed Beauvoir's message to spread everywhere, even if it was, a bit watered down. It's the strange example of how systems trying to manage or control ideas can sometimes accidentally become the vehicle for them.
That's a really powerful, counterintuitive idea. So what exactly was lost in that original translation? Can you give us some specifics, things that really show the depth of what was cut?
Absolutely. The original translation just omitted mentions of politicians, military leaders, courtesans, saints, artists, poets. All these figures Beauvoir used to illustrate the huge variety of women's roles and influence through history.
So it flattened the picture.
Completely. And it even cut these vivid stories, like the one about the Chatelaine Abbey, who had her architect's head chopped off to keep her tower secret.
Whoa. Okay, yeah, you lose something there.
You lose some of the most narrative, even romantic parts. It just made the book less vivid, less broad in scope, and maybe, frankly, a bit less readable.
Wow, that really changes the whole feel of the book. So when did this start to get fixed, and did the new version capture that lost essence?
It took a long time, until 2009 for a new English translation by Constance Borden and Sheila Malovany-Chevalier.
Okay.
And this one is complete and unabridged, and definitely more sensitive to the original's existentialist armature. It corrects a lot of those mistakes that really hid the philosophical weight of the work.
Okay, so beyond just being complete, what's like one specific example from the new translation that really shifted how we understand Beauvoir's core message? Something that made you go, aha.
The most famous one, probably, is that iconic phrase, on ne n'est pas femme, on se devient.
All right.
Partially translated as, one is not born, but rather becomes a woman.
A woman. Oh.
The new translation reads, one is not born, but rather becomes woman.
Huh. Just the A.
Just that little word. But it's profound. Partially as a woman implies, an individual instance maybe still tied to some biological essence.
Right, like becoming one example of the category.
Exactly. The new woman, no article emphasizes that woman itself is a social construct. A category we're placed into, not an essential nature we're born with. It really underscores that identity isn't just given, it's made, constructed.
That makes a massive difference philosophically. Wow. Shows how deeply our understanding was shaped by that one little error. But even the new, more accurate translation got some criticism, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Some critics, like Toril Moy, they acknowledged it was complete, finally, but found the language maybe literal to the detriment of felicity and coherence.
Meaning
Meaning it could be a bit clunky, maybe less flowing than Beauvoir's original French, which Moy described as lucid, powerful, and elegantly phrased. Moy kind of lamented that while young women would devour partially slawed version because it read easily.
Despite the problems.
Yes. She said it's hard to imagine anyone doing that with this version. So readers gained accuracy, but maybe lost some of that captivating flow. It's a tricky trade-off, isn't it?
It really is, and that leads to this potent, almost meta-irony, this idea that women and the work of a woman is still being treated as property. What does that tell us? Not just about the past, but maybe about how value and control still operate, even today, even in intellectual spaces.
It tells us that the very act of bringing Beauvoir's ideas into the world became an example of her own thesis.
Wow.
That even a woman's intellectual work can be subjected to definitions, interventions, limitations imposed by, well, a patriarchal structure. It's a powerful echo of her arguments about how women's experiences, their bodies, even their thoughts, are often treated as objects, not subjects.
Yeah.
It really sets the stage perfectly for our next section, where we dive into Beauvoir's own arguments: biology, society, and the construction of woman.
Okay, so Beauvoir starts right off with this radical claim. Biology is not enough to define her as woman.
Right out of the gate.
Or to answer that big question, why is woman the other? She goes right down to basics. Gametes, sperm and eggs. Fundamentally equivalent, she says, developing from similar cells.
Yeah, no inherent hierarchy there at the cellular level.
Exactly. And even how sex develops in the body, the soma, that's influenced by hormones, it suggests this kind of neutral element that the environment profoundly affects.
Right. And what's crucial is her insight that the human species is forever in a state of change, forever becoming. We're not static.
Always evolving.
So a fixed biological definition just isn't enough for understanding complex humans. She says her body is one of the essential elements in her situation in the world. But that body is not enough to define her as woman. It's a starting point,
Yeah.
Not the whole story.
That immediately pushes back against centuries of thinking. So if biology isn't the whole picture, where do we look? How did history and society actually build this secondary status, make women the other?
Well, historically, she points out, legislators, priests, philosophers, writers, and scientists have striven to show that the subordinate position of woman is willed in heaven and advantageous on earth.
So basically everyone with authority.
Pretty much. You see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Legends like Eve and Pandora. Philosophers like Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas calling woman an occasional or imperfect man.
Imperfect man, wow.
Roman law citing imbecility, instability of the sex to deny rights. St. Augustine saying woman is neither decisive nor constant. It's just this pervasive, deeply ingrained system of justification across all fields.
Sounds like a centuries-long PR campaign to other women, almost.
Yeah.
Beauvoir also mentions Engels' view patriarchy emerging with private property, new tools like the plow.
Right. Man masters slaves, land, becomes proprietor also of woman. Her domestic labor just sank into insignificance.
But Beauvoir doesn't fully buy that explanation, does she?
No, she adds this really key counter-argument. She points out that women don't form a minority or a separate collective unit in the same way as, say, the proletariat or racial minority.
How so?
They don't easily say we, except maybe in formal feminist settings. They struggle to authentically assume a subjective attitude as a unified group.
Why is that distinction so critical for her?
Because it highlights how insidious the oppression is. It's woven so deeply into daily life, into intimate relationships, often isolating women from each other, making collective action much harder than for other oppressed groups who might have more obvious shared spaces or identities.
That makes sense. It raises the question then, what about man's role in this? What does he gain?
Well, Beauvoir looks at man as homo faber, man the maker, the inventor.
The creator.
Right. He transcended his animal nature through making tools. Through creation, he conquered the world, found self-realization as an existent through doing, through building.
So when she uses that word transcendence, what does that really mean in this context? Achieving transcendence.
For Beauvoir, transcendence is about actively projecting yourself into the future, creating things, shaping the world, engaging in meaningful projects outside yourself. It's about defining your own existence through action. Man, she says, burst out of the present. He opened the future. And this activity, this creation, it had a kind of sacred quality for men. It affirmed their humanity.
Okay, so action creation moving forward. And if man is the transcendent creator, always striving outwards, what does that make woman in this system?
In contrast, woman is largely positioned as an immanent object.
Immanent. Okay, what's that?
Where transcendence is about outward projects and the future, immanence means being confined, dwelling within, lacking that outward push. She's seen as part of the property that groups possess in exchange.
Like a commodity almost.
In a way, yeah. To the extent she's seen as the absolute other, she can't be recognized as a subject with her own projects, her own potential for transcendence. Beauvoir even notes Levi Strauss, suggesting that the basic bond in marriage isn't really between men and women, but between men by means of women. Women are just the principal occasion for it.
Wow. That is a stark transactional view of marriage. How did this play out historically?
Well, in the Middle Ages, canon law saw marriage as a concession to human frailty.
Yeah.
Married women were basically legally incompetent and powerless. Fast forward to the 18th century, you see some elite women, like Madame de Pompadour, controlling things through culture. But that was the exception, not the rule.
Right.
Then the 19th century industrial era, women start working, gaining some dignity through labor, but usually for less pay than men. Even in early America, where women were maybe more emancipated initially due to the frontier, eventually, social control stayed firmly in male hands.
So despite some surface changes, that underlying dynamic of otherness just persists. How early does this conditioning, this socialization into being the other, actually start?
Oh, from infancy, right away. Girls are cajoled, they're allowed tears, dressed in sweet little dresses, protected against the anguish of solitude.
Coddled, almost.
While boys, conversely, are told things like a man doesn't ask to be kissed or a man doesn't look at himself in mirrors. They're pushed towards independence. It's just a completely different set of unspoken rules from day one.
And the phallus becomes this concrete symbol for boys, a physical sign of their status.
Yes, exactly. Pride in manhood is instilled into him. And this abstract idea gets concrete. It's incarnated in his penis. Mothers, nurses, they keep alive the tradition that identifies the phallus and the male idea.
And for girls, how is that experienced?
For girls, it's often experienced as a kind of lack or even a mutilation. A girl is pressed to become, like her elders, a servant and an idol.
Servant and idol. That's a contradiction right there.
Totally. She learns that To accept herself as a woman is to become resigned and to mutilate herself. Her own dreams of activity get constrained. The whole maternal sphere often looks narrow and stifling. And narcissism, Beauvoir suggests, often emerges as a way for girls to compensate because they're denied those male-associated activities and that socially valued alter ego.
So the psychological hit from these early messages is just profound, internalizing otherness from the get-go. What happens as she hits adolescence?
Well, at puberty, her future kind of takes residence in her body, but it feels like an impure sickness, maybe brings a vague sense of guilt. She feels her lack of a penis has now become defilement and transgression.
That's heavy.
Yeah, she basically awaits man while the boy is actively making his way towards adulthood. And even for young women who start working, that economic independence often doesn't free them from duties at home. So she compares herself to her brother, who likely has no home duties and feels rebellious.
It sounds like a really fraught path. So what about marriage and motherhood? Society's big promises for women. Does Beauvoir see those as ways to finally achieve fulfillment, maybe transcendence?
Hardly. Marriage, Beauvoir argues, is forced much more tyrannically upon the young girl.
It's forced, even if she chooses it.
Well, it's often a choice made with calculation, disgust, resignation, rather than by enthusiasm. Why? Because she often prefers marriage to a career because of the economic advantages held by men.
The practical reality.
Right. A truly free choice, Beauvoir emphasizes, would also mean being free not to marry. So even when it looks like a choice, it's often what they call a Hobson's choice, right? Dictated by the societal structure.
That's a pretty stark view of marriage. What about conjugal love within that, the idealized part?
Beauvoir calls it an equivocal concept. The wedding night, for instance, often becomes this test that can doom women to frigidity. They're caught between these contradictory male desires, wanting her to be respected and passionately desired.
Another impossible bind.
Exactly. It's tragic, really. An intimate act becomes another site of performance and potential failure for her.
And the home itself? The domestic sphere, is that a sanctuary?
More like a battleground, often. In marriage, the husband typically embodies transcendence, his work, his social life outside the home.
Right, looking outward.
While the wife is often doomed to the continuation of the species and the care of the home, that is to say, to imminence, confined.
Stuck in the within.
Yeah. She only reaches out beyond herself towards the social group through her husband, its intermediary. And Beauvoir paints this really bleak picture, the sad fate of the housekeeper, constantly battling dust, stains, mud, and dirt. She calls it a war against sin, leading often to nervousness and acrimony.
It sounds like this relentless, almost Sisyphean struggle, doesn't it? This endless battle against entropy in the home that's never really won.
It's almost exhausting just thinking about it. And then, as if that's not enough, Beauvoir turns to maternity.
Which is often so romanticized.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But she dissects it with this startling, sometimes uncomfortable complexity.
How so?
Well, okay, maternity might be woman's physiological destiny, but human intervention, contraception, illegal abortions complicates it hugely. Abortion, she points out, can be a trauma, a sacrifice of her femininity, and it exposes the hypocrisy of the masculine moral code. Men often forbid it publicly, but accept it privately when it's convenient.
So even in this supposed natural calling, women are caught.
Deeply conflicted. And while pregnancy can provide a tranquil justification, a feeling of reunion with the wholeness of things, maternal love isn't always pure bliss either. It can lead to jealousy or resentment towards the kids for, ruining her figure or being an enemy of waxed floors. It really challenges that idealized image.
Okay, moving beyond these lived realities, let's talk about how society constructs the myth of woman. What's the core idea she's exposing here?
What's fascinating is how society actively requires woman to make herself an erotic object.
Requires it.
Yeah. Think about fashion. Skirts, high heels. Beauvoir argues they're often designed to thwart her projects, not to reveal her independence. They're about display, making her an object to be looked at, not about functional freedom.
And men then hold these conflicting myths about women, right? Goddess and demon at the same time.
They do. From the praying mantis and demon to the muse and goddess mother, these incompatible myths just lead to strange incoherencies in how men see and treat women. And this whole myth of woman, Beauvoir argues, it's kind of luxury for men.
A luxury.
Yeah, useful for male self-justification. It lets men project their own desires and fears onto women instead of seeing them as, actual autonomous beings.
So that whole idea of woman being inherently mysterious, that's just a male construct, a way to avoid really understanding.
Precisely. Men are unable to penetrate her special experience. Things like, what's the quality of her erotic pleasure, the discomfort of menstruation, the pain of childbirth.
Things they don't experience.
Right. So from the male perspective, woman seems mysterious in essence. But Beauvoir points out, hey, mystery exists on both sides. It's just that the male perspective sets itself up as the absolute, denying women their own subjective reality.
Okay, so what about woman's own character? Her convictions, values, even things sometimes seen as flaws like lying or dissimulation, are those innate?
No, Beauvoir asserts that woman's character, her convictions, her values, even things like lying, are explained by her situation, her circumstances.
It's a product of the environment.
Exactly. Because she's denied transcendence, denied the chance to act freely on the world, she often fails to achieve those loftiest human attitudes like heroism, revolt, disinterestedness, imagination, creation. It's a crucial insight. These aren't innate failings, they're adaptations to being constantly constrained.
So deception could actually be like a survival tool or even a subtle form of rebellion.
Exactly right. Man even demands play acting, she says. He wants woman to be the other, the object, but he also wants her to feel pleasure, to sincerely recognize his superiority. It's impossible.
A total contradiction.
Right, so it forces her to lie, to hold the man who provides her daily bread. She uses powers of dissimulation, sometimes just to survive, sometimes as a kind of revenge, or simply to navigate these crazy contradictions and hold on to some tiny bit of agency.
Given all of this complex web, what does Beauvoir say about the independent woman, the one who tries to step outside these confines?
Well, the independent woman faces this huge predicament. Just by seeking self-sufficiency, she often faces a bad start. She still often carries heavy family duties. And there's always the temptation of that easier, parasitic life offered by men.
The path of least resistance.
Kind of. So she might restrain her aspiration to avoid, humiliating men around her. Or she fears losing the hope of being one day delivered from taking care of herself. It just requires immense courage, Beauvoir suggests, and this constant willingness to fight against the current.
It sounds incredibly difficult, almost impossible. Is there any hope in Beauvoir's vision, or is it just bleak?
No, she definitely ends with hope, with this powerful idea that the free woman is just being born.
Just being born.
Yeah. She echoes the poet Rimbaud's prophecy. There shall be poets, when woman's unmeasured bondage shall be broken, when she shall live for and through herself. Man hitherto detestable, having let her go, she too will be poet. Woman will find the unknown. It's this vision of liberation, not just for women, but for unlocking humanity's full potential by finally unleashing these suppressed voices, these undiscovered perspectives.
What a journey we've taken. We've peeled back the layers of the second sex from its revolutionary critique of how womanhood is constructed, through all that intricate biological, social, psychological conditioning she just lays bare.
Yeah, meticulously.
And even through that surprising history of its own initial silencing and misrepresentation in translation, it really is a testament to the power of ideas, isn't it? Even when they're fought against.
It truly is. And it leaves us with this lingering thought. Beauvoir reveals this profound double significance of woman.
How so?
How she is positioned as all that man desires and all that he does not attain. She's seen as both hero and flesh, both the connection to propitious nature and also the temptation of unconquered nature, counter to all goodness.
So trapped in these contradictions.
Exactly. Trapped by them, yet it also hints at this vast, untapped potential locked within that contradiction.
And so we're left with a really provocative question for you to ponder. If woman has consistently been denied the chance to fully define herself, always seen through this lens of male desire and fear, what new forms of self, what new kinds of truth might emerge as her unmeasured bondage continues to break, as she increasingly lives for and through herself?
Yet what ideational worlds, as Beauvoir might put it, are still waiting out there to be discovered, not just for women, but really for all of humanity, once we truly allow for that kind of unburdened self-discovery.